Thanks, Admiral. Can you explain how the strike in Rafah does not cross the lines that the President has set and many of you have repeated that the operations be targeted and limited?
We still don't believe that a major ground operation in Rafah is warranted. We still don't want to see the Israelis, as we say, smash into Rafah with large units over large pieces of territory. We still believe that, and we haven't seen that at this point. But we're going to be watching this, of course, very, very closely. I want to just end this answer by making it very clear that regardless, every single loss of innocent life is tragic, and every single loss of innocent life should be prevented as much as possible.
Has the president seen the images?
I don't know. I can't speak to what he has absolutely been. He's been kept apprised throughout the weekend on this.
So you're saying the tent encampment that was first struck is considered a densely populated area?
The whole area of Rafah, Ed, is densely populated. Now, there has been 1 million or so who have evacuated Rafah proper, but it's not like they're going all that far away. The whole area is densely populated.
So how does this not violate the red line that the president laid out?
As I said, we don't want to see a major ground operation. We haven't seen that at this point.
How many more charred corpses does he have to see before the president considers a change in policy?
We don't want to see a single more innocent life taken, and I kind of take a little offense at the question. No civilian casualties is the right number of civilian casualties, and this is not something that we've turned a blind eye to, nor has it been something we've ignored or neglected to raise with our Israeli counterparts, including, Ed, this weekend as a result of this particular strike. Now, they're investigating it, so let's let them investigate it and see what they come up with.
But the president doesn't have like a personal limit to this?
The president has been very clear and very direct about what our expectations are for Israeli operations in Rafah specifically, but in Gaza writ large. We don't support, we won't support a major ground operation in Rafah, and we've, again, been very consistent on that. And the president said that should that occur, then it might make him have to make different decisions in terms of support. We haven't seen that happen at this point.
Why not have him come out and say that himself?
The president has been speaking to leaders throughout the region on a regular basis. He has been addressing you guys in various fora. You've got plenty of opportunities to talk to the president, including, I might add, in a press conference last week.
You've said now that you don't think a major ground invasion is happening in Rafah right now, but as you note, this is a densely populated area. It all is. I understand that this might be a secondary explosion. The Israelis are describing it as a tragic mishap, but isn't this exactly the kind of incident that you have been concerned about this whole time?
As I said in my opening statement, this exactly does speak to the challenge of military operations in a densely populated area. A challenge, I would add, Mary, that we have been sharing and our perspectives on with the Israelis from our own lessons learned in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. This incident speaks exactly to that challenge.
And despite the loss of life here, do you still believe that this strike was precise and proportional?
There's an investigation. I think we're going to let the Israelis do their work. I don't think you can expect me to speak to the details of a specific strike by Israeli military forces when we had nothing to do with that.
And just one more, you've called the strike devastating, the images heartbreaking, but you've stopped short of outright condemning this strike. Can you explain why?
We have been, I think, very strident in our condemnations about the deaths of innocent civilians. These deaths are not excused from that. But we have to understand what happened here. There's going to be an investigation. They've already said it was a tragic mistake. They're looking into it. They have been able to investigate themselves and hold people accountable in the past. We'll see what they do here.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I want to be clear, after this weekend strike, is it our assumption that nothing about U.S. policy has changed or is changing in regards to...
As a result of this strike on Sunday, I have no policy changes to speak to. It just happened. The Israelis are going to investigate it. We're going to be taking great interest in what they find in that investigation, and we'll see where it goes from there.
I also want to ask, we saw a good amount of international condemnation after this strike, whether it was from President Macron of France, others in Europe. We have not yet heard from the president publicly at all about this strike. Why is that?
Well, again, I think I've answered this question with Ed. You've heard the president on numerous occasions in just the last few days about what's going on in the Middle East and in other places around the world, and you'll hear from him again. I'm absolutely confident of that.
One last question. Is there any concern that the United States itself is being isolated internationally as we continue to support the operation and you're seeing European allies?
One of the things that we've talked about with the Israelis are about the manner in which some of these operations are being conducted is the real danger that Israel itself could become further isolated from the international community just by dint of the manner in which they are conducting operations. So this is of concern, clearly, because it's not in Israel's best interest, and it's not in our best interest for Israel to become increasingly isolated on the world stage. As a matter of fact, one of the things the president came into office wanting to do, and actually we had made some progress before the 7th of October, was working towards a more integrated Israel into the region. So it's in our national security interest to make sure that that doesn't happen. The president doesn't make decisions and he doesn't execute on policy based on public opinion polling or on popularity contests. He bases his decisions on our own national security interests, what's at stake for our safety and security here at home and abroad, and what's in the best interests of our allies and partners. Sometimes what's in the best interest of your alliance and your partnership is to be candid, forthright, even tough with your friend, which we have been able to do with Israel.
So I just want to be clear on that. We spoke about Israel's isolationism there. I just want to make clear, are you concerned at all, or is the administration concerned at all about the United States being out of step or isolated?
I thought I got to that in the last part of my soliloquy.
No, I did.
I did!
Well, I'm sorry, I did not catch that.
You didn't get it. Okay, so I'm going to try it again, and we'll see. Maybe take two would be better. The president's not making decisions based on popularity or public opinion polls here around the world. He's making decisions about our national security based on those interests and what meets those interests. And it certainly doesn't meet our interest, and it doesn't meet our Israeli partners' interest for them to become further isolated. But he's not making decisions based on that being a worry. He's making decisions based on what's in the best interest of the American people and our safety and security abroad.
Thank you so much. So last week from this podium, Jake Sullivan was asked about the Rafah operation, and he said, and I quote him, "What we're going to be looking at is whether there is a lot of death and destruction from this operation." So if what happened this weekend doesn't qualify as a lot of death and destruction, how would you describe it, and how would you quantify what a lot of death and destruction in Rafah is?
There's not like a measuring stick here or a quota. As we've said many times, the right number of civilian casualties is 0. We won't see any. Now we've seen more than about a dozen or so that we know of, at least from this strike alone. That's horrific. That's terrible. We don't want to see that. The answer should be 0. The Israelis have said this was a tragic mistake. They're going to investigate that. We're going to let them do that. But we've also said, and this is the other part of what Jake said, is that we don't want to see a major ground operation in Rafah that would really make it hard for the Israelis to go after Hamas without causing extensive damage and potentially a large number of deaths. We have not seen them do that at this point, but we're watching it very closely.
Admiral, you've said repeatedly that the U.S. doesn't want to see a major ground operation in Rafah, but Israeli tanks just moved into central Rafah. How is that not a major military operation?
Well, again, I don't want to talk about Israeli Defense Force operations, but my understanding is, and I believe the Israelis have spoken to this, that they are moving along something called the Philadelphia corridor, which is on the outskirts of the town, not in the town proper. That's what the Israelis have said. We're not on the ground, Gabe. We're not there. I mean, we don't have troops that can look at every single soldier and where they are. We're going based on what the Israelis are telling us and what they're saying publicly and what we're able to discern as best we can. As you and I speak here today, we have not seen a major ground operation, and these tanks are moving along a corridor that they have told us previously that they would use on the outskirts of the town to try to put pressure on Hamas.
NBC's crew in Gaza has described it as being central Rafah. If it were to be central Rafah, would that be considered a major?
A single tank? A single tank with a dozen or so guys? And I mean, we're talking about, you're dragging me into a hypothetical, and I hate that, but one tank, one armored vehicle does not constitute a major ground operation. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's going on right now. What I'm telling you is what the Israelis have told us about what they're doing. They tell us on the outskirts. A major ground operation is, thousands and thousands of troops moving in a maneuvered, concentrated, coordinated way against a variety of targets on the ground. The kinds of things we've seen, we've done ourselves. That's what we're talking about here.
And then one last thing on a strike today, at least 21 people killed in a strike that hit a tent encampment in southern Gaza today. What's the U.S. response to that?
We can't verify those reports. The Israelis are saying publicly that there was no such strike, so I'd point you to them. I can't speak to it.
Thanks. And just want to make this very clear between what's happened on Sunday, what's happened in terms of the ongoing ground operations since. There's nothing that you have seen thus far that would prompt a U.S. withdrawal of more military assistance.
I believe that's what I've been saying here.
Okay, cool. And just want to get your reaction as well to the House Republicans asking for sanctions against the ICC or some of its officials. Is that something that the Biden administration is going to support?
No, we don't believe that sanctions against the ICC is the right approach here. No.
Why?
I mean, look, we obviously don't believe the ICC has jurisdiction. We certainly don't support these arrest warrants. We've said that before. We don't believe, though, that sanctioning the ICC is the answer.
Thank you, Karine. Admiral, please help me to understand. You just said that basically there is no major operation that you have seen by the Israelis in Rafah. And you insisted that it has to be a viable plan to evacuate all civilians, and that was considered kind of red line, if you don't want to call it a red line. So explain to me how 1 million people who are forced to leave Rafah to no place that's considered a safe zone, with now only 400,000 left, how could it be that different from what you said, that we oppose the plan unless the Israelis give us really a viable way to make sure that these 1.5 million civilians are safe? So 1 million, they're not really safe, because we have seen yesterday they have been attacked, they're burned to death, with kids have no heads, headless kids, you've seen the pictures.
Yes, I have.
And then now, the Israelis, basically, their plan is to let these people leave, but not voluntarily. These people are forced to leave. So how could be this any different from your insistence that it has to be a good plan, a viable plan, a practical plan to make sure that these people are going to a safe place?
I didn't say that everything that's happening in Rafah right now is perfect or good.
No,
I'm not saying that at all.
What you said before. You said before that it has to be a viable plan to evacuate 1.5 million people. Now we have 1 million completely in nowhere.
Yeah, not all the 1.5 million are out of Rafah, right? There's still hundreds of thousands that are still in Rafah, that are still in danger. And we still have not seen a plan to take care of their safety and security, which is why nothing's changed about our view that we don't want to see a major ground operation in Rafah that puts those people at greater risk. I'm not really sure where you and I are on a different page here.